Bott. Steve Bott. I'm sorry, Dr. Bott. I apologize.
Your microphone.
Dr. Bott, I apologize.
There we go.
It's not an easy title to get. You're gonna have you follow. You have 10 minutes to your opening statements, and then if any questions, then follow it up to 2 minutes afterwards. Got sense?
Yes, sir.
You got it. You're ready to go.
Esteemed council members, staff, and community members. I often tell people I didn't fall out of heaven, but I came up from hell. I'm a survivor, a community healer, a partner, a father of 3 powerful children. I've survived poverty, abuse, a family history of mental illness and addiction, sibling suicide, and prison. I was 11 years old the first time I saw someone murdered in front of me. 11 when I found my grandmother dead on the kitchen floor. 11 when I was left back in school. 11 the first time I was arrested. There was no intervention for me. No one to inquire about the trauma I'd experienced. No one to provide the much needed mental health care or support. I've been treated like garbage most of my young life, and as a result, began to treat the world around me as garbage. Hopelessness and despair were my everyday reality. At 15, I was arrested with a friend for stealing socks. No one bothered to ask if we needed them. My friend was afraid to go to Rikers Island, an adult facility, alone, so I lied about my age and told the arresting officer I was 16. Troubled and misguided, we were not just unruly, but truly disrespectful to the police handling us. As payback, they instructed the corrections officers to give us what they called the treatment. At 15 and 16, we were put in a cell handcuffed with unhandcuffed sexual predators. That night changed my life. Only through the protection of God, an indomitable will to survive, and the small blessing that we were handcuffed from the front and not the back did we survive. When I look back now, it's clear to me that the circuitous trajectory of my life has its own strange purpose. Because of both what happened to me that I couldn't control, the trauma of being a black boy in a world that did not value me, and because of the personal choices that I did control and make, to sell drugs, to turn my life around, to commit personally to healing and restoring Allentown, the city I once damaged, and to be an example to the next generation of children that their paths do not define their futures, I'm committed to healing so I can heal the village around me. Today, the boy that was left back at 11, the boy that was attacked in an adult prison, the boy that was traumatized by having an eyewitness murder, is the man who chose to educate himself in trauma and recovery. The man who went back to earn his BA, his master's, and a doctorate so that he could not just have the experiential knowledge, but the academic understanding to begin the process of healing the people of the city he once damaged. I love Allentown. I love the people. I love the progress. And I'm disappointed with what we currently said. At this critical moment in our country, our city has a choice to make. And it is not simply about who gets to be mayor, but more importantly, about where we are and what we are truly willing to turn the page, put aside politics as usual, and embrace the voices and the best interests of the people. I've spent time in deep reflection on the code of ethics and the scenario presented. Given the values I hold, transparency, distributive collaborative leadership, and deep listening to both those at the top of the economic ladder and those impacted most by the systemic failures, my leadership will prevent this scenario from ever happening, because I believe in making decisions in community with stakeholders, from city council to department heads to staff to community leaders and residents of our city. Institutions are comprised of people. People are governed by relationship. Without relationships, everything we do is bound to fail. And what we've seen in the past few years is that our past mayor did not foster the kind of relationships with city council and city hall staff that fully supported and empowered them to do their jobs. My first job in the first 30 days as mayor is to sit down with all the key stakeholders, from city council to city hall staff to community and business leaders, and begin to build trust and institute collaborative processes that once again make the city hall not only one of the best places to work in the Lehigh Valley, but the very heart of truly making this the city without limits. I often say that healing occurs in relationships and within community. Allentown needs healing. In my experience, this healing takes time. The trust has been fractured, and we need a leader that can name and sit down with the distrust and the pain that now exists. For many of our residents in this majority minority city, this pain and distrust is not new. Joseph Hoffman said it best the other night: the city works well as long as you're white and male. My experiences have equipped me and prepared me well to represent and unite both Allentowns. I know the pains of poverty as well as the power of education. I know firsthand the journey to and through homelessness, as well as the responsibilities of home ownership. My experiences have given me zeal, the compassion, and the unending belief in the strength of the human spirit to see greatness across the community every day, and know that we only truly maximize our potential once we welcome our residents to contribute to the decision-making process. Allentown needs a leader that understands the power of community solutions. I'm that leader. Just as healing occurs in relationships, so does greatness. I do not make decisions in isolation, especially when they impact the lives of others. Secrecy, backdoor politics, and power grabs are key ingredients to create corruption. My administration will be transparent, approachable, accessible, and collaborative. The success of the city depends on vibrant partnerships inside and outside City Hall with those elected, selected, and hired to serve our people, as well as the community and business leaders. I have a rich history and proven track record of cross-sector collaboration with nonprofits, for-profits, faith communities, educational institutions, criminal justice departments, healthcare institutions, local government, and community members to find solutions to complex problems and social issues. It is this process of collective impact and cross-sector collaboration that I will use to stimulate our economy, address public safety, and build employee morale. The heads of our departments, from finance, human resources, and community development, to parks and recreation, public works, police, fire, and information systems, must be key players in decision-making. They were hired because of their expertise, and that expertise must be used to its maximum potential. Yo soy porque nosotros somos. I am because we are. I embody collaboration and the notion that it takes a village to create the kind of environment we want the city to be, a place where all can come to the table and with a better future, not only for ourselves, but for our children's children. I believe that an investment in you is an investment in the world. I have worked tirelessly to not only support the great people of our city, but also to develop the next generation of leaders across this community, encouraging residents daily to hone their passions and give back to their community. Recently, there was a press conference for International Women's Day with a room full of women right here in the City Hall, and I was the only man. I stood at the same podium and shared how honored I was to be the only man present, and their response was, "You're the only one we trust." That was a tremendous honor, which I believe speaks to my ability and desire to work across sectors, race, gender, religions, to form relationships and focus on our common goals. I will prioritize our economics and public safety. I will stabilize leadership throughout this city by filling vacancies and launching a national search for a police chief that requires us to select an individual with a documented history of working across sectors to achieve safety and dignity for all. I believe firmly that public safety is not the sole responsibility of the criminal justice system, and research supports that many issues we designate as criminal justice issues are in fact public health issues. As a public health researcher and professional, I will leverage my relationships with local health networks, nonprofit organizations, universities, and our federally qualified health centers to strengthen partnerships to address issues such as violence as a contagious disease and addiction as a public health issue requiring support, healing, and rehabilitation. I'm a leader that does not speak of the great people of our city from the abstract. I celebrate birthdays and graduations with them. I feel their pain when their children are murdered and arrested. I eat flan in the living room of Abuela in Center City and matzo ball soup on West End on Passover. I have made it as a person of color in this city. I have made it as someone that has pushed out of this public school system, and I've made it as a formerly incarcerated person. I have experienced struggle and overcome structural inequities. I'm a bridge builder, and I represent hope for those members of the community that have been failed, and they can rise again. We're not a perfect city by any means, but we can be. A city where we ask the critical questions: are you okay? What do you need? How can I support you? We can be a city where we allow grace to lead us. We can be a city where we put people first and pay a living wage. And because we pay a living wage, people have money in their pockets to solicit our businesses, and our businesses thrive. We can be a city where everybody benefits from our resources and not just a few. This is my vision for the city we can build together. This is my vision for the legacy we can co-create. Hiring me as your interim mayor is how we begin to transform ourselves from a city with a great model to truly becoming a city without limits. Thank you.
I said before, there's no applause in here. All right, we're going to reset it. We have 8 minutes. 8 minutes for council questions. We'll start on this end.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And Dr. Botts, thank you very much for being here tonight. I think it's plain to everyone in this room that your passion for this city is boundless, and I want to thank you for participating in this process, first and foremost. I have two questions for you. The first is an economic development question. What would you recommend doing to increase the business development, specifically small businesses, in all of our neighborhoods that we have to do? And the second question is, because you are a specialist in healing, what steps would you take to heal the divisions that the community has, council has, and our city staff has, thanks to what's going on the last few years?
The second question is an amazing question. Thank you for asking it. So to start with the second question, again, I believe healing occurs in relationships. And I think we have to sit down and we have to build trust. We have to talk to one another, we have to develop processes, and we have to be inclusive. We have to listen to one another. I think that it's going to take time. I mean, we've heard the other night that healing is easy, and I disagree with that. Healing is very difficult. And it takes a lot of time, and it takes honesty and transparency, and not just a word, but it takes us really being devoted and dedicated, and it takes vulnerability, putting egos aside. And sometimes it takes outside support. Sometimes we have to bring in facilitators. And that's what I would do. I would put forth a commitment to healing, to respect, to truth and transparency. And these are things that a leader does. You can't teach people that. You have to model it. So I will consistently show up with my authentic self and be that person every day to show that I'm here and I'm committed to this. And as far as the first question regarding business development outside of the NIS, I would push for some of the same benefits that are included in the NIS to be for businesses outside of the NIS, and invite small businesses to join our city, to show them that they have a place. Again, through a similar process. I think everything comes with speaking with people and understanding what their needs are and what will entice them. So rather than arbitrarily us deciding what will bring business to the city.
Thank you very much, Dr. Butts. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Zuko.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Butts, thank you so much for your story and your commitment to this city. What are your thoughts on neighborhood community policing? Now, when I say that, I mean neighborhood community policing in the concept that officers are in business fronts and store fronts and that kind of thing, not just on foot.
When you say not just on foot, do you mean in addition to being on foot?
Yes.
I think when we talk about the police force, the first thing that I notice in Allentown is the police do not represent the people that are being served. So I think that people need to see themselves reflected in those that are protecting them. In more ways just than superficially. I think the police need to have deep relationships. I think at some of the top levels, I know I have relationships with the police officers, some of the captains, and I support community policing in theory in that sense, but I think it's going to take some structural changes for us to have a true trusting relationship with the police in this community. And again, back to the question that Councilman Robinson asked, it's going to require healing. And it's going to require healing, and with that healing, it's going to require something that's difficult oftentimes for police departments, and that's relinquishing power. So the police will have to come to the people to have those conversations. They'll have to take their guns off. They'll have to show up as human beings and establish relationships with them. They'll have to come and meet with them in their homes. I mean, it's more than just putting policies in place in grocery stores, but it's really knowing the people that you're protecting and serving. And it needs to be a level of accountability that goes with that also.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Batts, for wanting to serve and being so courageous. If you were chosen as the mayor after rebuilding public trust, what is the next thing in your agenda that you will do to try to continue to tackle the growth of this city?
The next thing I would do is, again, we would speak with the people, we would consult with them, and we begin to plan the comprehensive strategic planning process and involve all sectors of the community. When we talk about growth, whether it's business development or structural development infrastructure, I think that we have to look at issues of economics. It's not just economic issues, but understand we have to bring the education system in, we have to look at workforce development, we have to look at the parks and recs. All of that is part of how do we attract people to this city. We're losing our youth. I spent a day in Philadelphia with the Deputy Director of Violence Prevention, He's a Darif graduate. This guy's phenomenal. He graduated from Darif High School and he couldn't come back to Allentown and find a job. So he lives in Philadelphia. He loves the city. His grandmother's in the city. He wants to come back. And every day I work with millennials that want to stay here, but they leave for Atlanta and Camden and places like that. So I work to attract businesses here that will support that development and keep people in the city.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hoffman?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Mr. Brad, Dr. Brad, and thank you for coming and applying for this position. It seems that one of your priorities is the youth in the city. Do you have any programs in mind to help bridge the relationship between the police officers and the youth of today?
So there are a couple that currently exist within the city where youth and police officers are coming together for training. So it will be to support those programs that currently exist, but also to take them to a step further. I mean, I've worked in New York City with a program called Compassionate Policing. And I think oftentimes the programs that we implement put the responsibility on the community to change their perception. And often I think that the need is there for the police to change their perception of the communities that they're policing. So I would put, that's one program in particular that I would bring in. It's called Compassionate Policing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I had the opportunity to, I guess it was Keith Morris that had town hall meetings with three different times with groups. And I was able to see the difference between these young men and women walking in, and after interacting with the police officers, the difference when they walked out. I could feel in the room that there was respect on both sides.
Okay.
So that's something that I, as a councilwoman, would like to see that implemented back into our police force. Thank you again.
Thank you. And again, as I shared in the letter, I would make it a requirement that the chief that we select has experience working across sectors to deal with the issue of public safety. So they would also have experience working within the community and with the people.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Dr. Watts. I'm going to hit on the question that my colleague, Mr. Zuckel, asked you. How would you go about minority hiring and attracting more minorities to apply? That's one of the criticisms we hear quite often here at Council, that we don't reflect the overall general population and makeup of the police department. What specific programs would you?
Specifically in the police department?
Yes.
Okay. I would create a welcoming environment where I would let people know that they're welcome, and we would target, I mean, we could look at HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, and attract people. We could look at growing our own locally, go within the schools and create relationships where people know that, you know, the way our children strive to want to be police officers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, last segment is 2 minutes. Yours 2 minutes to tell City Council why you should be the mayor.
In May 2015, Jonisha Perry, a beautiful 19-year-old mother, walked halfway across the Hamilton Bridge, stopped, unstrapped her adorable 20-month-old baby boy Zamir Perry from his stroller, threw him in the river, and moments later jumped. A year later at her sentencing, we learned that Jonisha was a survivor of sexual abuse with a family history of addiction and mental illness, who'd been in and out of the foster care system. Jonisha had been in school trying to get a better life for herself and her baby. She'd been in counseling, taking medication, and her mental health insurance lapsed. At her sentencing, we learned the community around her was confused because she was a great mom. And when she shared what led to her heinous crime, she simply said, "I lost hope." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks, because I know what it's like to lose hope, because of a series of systems failing around you, because I know what it's like to begin to believe that your circumstances are just too much to bear as a result to self-destruct. Jonisha's pain and Zamir's untimely death haunt me even now, and I began to imagine what a community would look like, where beautiful, promising 19-year-old girls felt hope, but also felt a sense of belonging and agency. I urge you to think about the new arrivals at our literacy center and the refugee families at our federally qualified health center. I urge you to think about the oh so many Janishas across our city. I urge you to appoint an interim mayor that thinks about the individuals living under the bridges and the needs, hopes, and contributions that our seniors have made to our community. The next mayor of our city should be an astute administrator that cares about the people that work for this city, a leader that empowers his staff and key partners to bring their best selves to the table every day. Now is the time to be courageous and abandon politics as usual. It is the people of Allentown who stood beside me and held me up in the darkest hour, and they have been there. In my moments of success and joy, they have been there. So when the call was made and the people told me to throw my hat in the ring to be mayor, I had no other choice. They told me that my voice would be heard, that my story matters, that their stories matter. I speak for me, I speak for the people. We stand here collectively as a community of one Allentown with a clear message.
Thank you, Dr. Botts.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, dude.
Thank you.
Fast.